Good afternoon, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. Now, I released my latest instrumental single, In Flight, a couple of days ago. There'll be a link to that in the description as well as up there. If you haven't heard it yet, it'd be great if you could go and check it out. And thank you so much to those of you who've already listened to it and have been streaming it and the kind words that you've said about it. I really, really appreciate that. So to sort of celebrate its release a little bit more, I thought I would make another one of these videos and go through the production file and let you know just exactly how I went about composing and producing In Flight. This is probably going to be the last of this type of video that I make for a little while. I might do one for every new single as it comes out, but I've done loads and loads of these recently and they're incredibly long-winded and tiring and stressful to actually put together, and I don't want anyone to get bored of them or whatever. So this track was originally one of the various projects that I started with the intention of calling it Unrest, which isn't going to be a track anymore. That's just not happening. What was going to be Unrest is now called Drench. And there was another track that I also thought was going to be called Unrest, but is now going to be called Be At Rest, because I couldn't get any of the music that I was writing at that time to fit that title. This is something that I wrote specifically thinking about like ambient music as a genre. I was really trying to tailor this towards the ambient side of things instead of the orchestral side of things, which I do in other tracks. I wanted something that had a feeling of gently undulating. You know, Switzerland was something that sort of just built up to this big climax of the track, whereas this, there is like a peak to it, but the idea of the peak is that that's one significant moment in a whole load of significant moments of like flying. It's so cliche, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, gentle sense of motion, things sort of flowing in and out, building up and coming down again, and hopefully you liked the track itself. But anyway, let's get to the production. So this is what the production looks like. As is usually the case with stuff I work on, it's a combination of things like drum samplers, sample libraries in Contact, as well as a whole load of my own recordings and audio files there. Let's start at the beginning. So I wanted something to begin with swelling pads. That's something I feel like I hadn't really done all that much before, but I didn't want it to just sound like it was a string swell or a pad swell. So I combined the two. So I have my string ensemble section here, which is doing this. But I duplicated that with a pad I made in a Juno emulation synth. They both sounded nice individually, but like I said, I wanted something that had elements of both of those sorts of sounds in them. So when they're played together, and you can see here on the Juno pad as well, I automated the cutoff of the synth, so it was swelling up and down with the strings. With the strings, I'm automating the modulation on each part. So those sort of little pyramid things there, it's just modulation on the actual expression of the notes. Very subtle, but like I said, I just wanted to create a sort of sense of movement with it. One of the other things I did in this track, which I haven't done before, is create some field ambience for the intro. So I literally just stuck my microphone out of my window, basically, and just recorded this. I'm using more and more field recordings in more interesting ways in all of the other releases after this. This was something I kind of finished about a month and a half ago. So in terms of using field recordings in general, that's not a particularly interesting application of it, but I felt like it just added a kind of nice atmosphere to everything and stopped it feeling too stagnant and sterile. Anyway, so after all the swells, the piano comes in. Not the most imaginative of melodies. I added a synth underneath that to again kind of reinforce a sense of progression in the tracks. That occasionally deviates from that pattern, so along here it goes up a little bit. Originally that went up again after that, but there's the piano that comes in as well, and I wanted to give the piano space for those notes to come through, so that bit, the lead up to when the beat first comes in. Do you remember in the How I Produce Switzerland video when I was talking about book percussion and I said this? If you put some reverb and a really interesting ping-ponging modulating delay, if you do this, you could make that sound like fluttering birds, you know, kind of going off into the distance as something climaxes. Well, that's exactly what I did in this track. If I take off the effects, it just sounds like this. On the topic of percussion, I did a lot of recording for this one, and I recorded loads of weird little sounds everywhere. So one of the things that I had alongside the field ambience was the what are labeled here as stick tree swells. That's literally that weird thing in the background over there that I just held and kind of shook in front of the mic. Obviously, there are loads of effects on it there. I also recorded myself playing with a load of dead leaves from my bonsai. Rest in peace. Again, it's not giving a beat, you know, it's not doing anything rhythmic. It's just creating another layer of texture underneath everything else that just helps things to, in my opinion, feel a little bit more organic and a bit more natural. I recorded other dead leaves doing something a little bit more rhythmic. Another rhythm with the dead leaves. Shaking a pick holder. Scrunching up a plastic wrapper. Playing around with some of my business cards. I recorded some classic page turns. I also did claps and clicks and all that stuff, but if I put all of the percussion that I recorded myself together, it'll sound a bit like this. And there are loads of other percussive elements in that. So let's just get that out of the way now. In terms of percussion, so this is the bigger section, obviously the kind of climax. This looks a bit more daunting than it actually is. A lot of these are from the same drum sample libraries in Battery. I just separated them off so that when I was exporting the stems for mixing, there weren't different hits on the same audio channels. I know that I should have just used the multi-output version of Battery, but I'd forgotten to do that. Anyway, let's have a listen to the percussion for the big section at the end. I'll take out the main drum kit element of that so you can hear what the more subtle stuff is doing. So that's the percussion for this track, really lots of small little details, a whole lot of recordings of random things around my flat as well, all layered together to hopefully create something that was nice, and obviously all of that is mixed with a real drum kit. I didn't want it to be too electronic. I wanted there to be something that again felt organic, which is why there's an actual drum kit in there as well as all of that stuff. That's the moment when the main beat comes in, and I added this other stuff to it as well. So I know I say that using like vinyl emulation sort of sounds is very cliche, and it is, but it works for certain effects. So I have two of them going on at the same time. And some shakers. And this is the snare that does the... You see, like the vinyl effect adds a sense of, I don't know, authenticity, I guess, which is probably the wrong word to use because it's very inauthentic vinyl sound. I'll add the layer of dead leaves into this as well, and hopefully you'll see what I mean when I say that it makes it sound more natural and organic. Even though it's not doing anything rhythmic, it just sort of gives it a more relaxed sort of vibe, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, so this is the kit and everything else. Then See what I mean? It's just a bit nicer, a bit more kind of smooth sounding. But it's very loud there. Obviously, when I mixed it significantly quieter than that. But yeah, so that's the percussion in the track. So let's take a look at that section altogether. I was always a little bit worried that that section came across as a bit boring because it's just the percussion and the piano and like a sub bass, I think, as well. But because I'd had all of the strings and the pads swelling beforehand, I wanted there to be a sense of, it was kind of like breaking through clouds. The intro is you sort of taking off and going up through the clouds, and then that moment, it's like suddenly you can breathe and you can see around you again, and I just wanted to create a kind of sense of calm. But then the strings and the pads come back in when it repeats that section. So that next section, I kind of imagine being like, you know, diving. Imagine you're a bird, by the way, not a plane. You've had this nice floating calm, but then it's like you decide to do something. So maybe you start diving down to the ocean. I don't know. This is so lame, isn't it? This is like the lamest stuff I've ever said. When that section starts, we've got some arpeggiated synths going on. That just builds nicely, the strings come in until the kind of beat properly comes back in. So the drum kit comes back in, but I gave it a more sort of obvious hi-hat rhythm. So again, like I wanted it to feel like there's a drummer there playing that kind of thing, as well as all of the ambience. Tell you what, I think that's my favorite part of the whole track, for me anyway, is the piano when it plays that melody there. These kind of block notes, because I used Soundtoys Echo Boy on that. I mean, this is, again, the production file, but I made sure I used the same settings in this and when I mixed it. So the Space Echo, like Roland Space Echoes are so good. One day I'm going to own one. But I just loved how that sounded. I had to automate it a little bit here because there were certain sections that I wanted the echo to be more audible in and some that I didn't. So very subtle, not really there then, but then this bit. I just think it sounds so nice all together. So that's the climax of the track, and if we go back to my little analogy about flying around as a bird, you've done your dive, you've done your thing, and you've soared across the surface of the water like a wandering albatross for a while, and then suddenly you go up again and maybe break through the clouds again, and it's sunny, and it's like, ooh, there we go, there's the big moment. I wasn't sure how I wanted that to sound, so I experimented with various different things, having like lots of really fast arpeggiated synths going on, but eventually I was just like, no, just like keep it relatively simple, so I have a string ensemble just playing that melody, basically, the one that's already featured in it a few times. And what I often do is double an ensemble section with a solo section if they're playing something really important. So then it kind of cuts off and fades off and becomes this kind of string thing just quieting down. And I was imagining when I was writing this, right, it sounds so pretentious, this is unbelievable, but I was imagining that point, because I visualize things a lot, so I was visualizing all this stuff, that's the point where you let the bird go. So the whole thing, it's not like necessarily that you are the bird, but you're just watching the bird, like you're like going with it. But then at the end, that's the point that I wanted to feel like there was like a sunset over the ocean, and the birds that you'd been following on this journey was flying away. And it was nice. It was like nice and calm, but it's like just flying off into the sunset. You're never going to see them again. Not like in a sad way, just in a, that's the end of this tale sort of thing. So that's why it then kind of calms down a lot. It doesn't continue on to like a bigger climax, and I didn't want to keep that going for ages because that kind of wasn't the point. This isn't a track like Switzerland was very much like, wow, look at how wonderful Switzerland is. It's beautiful and it's glorious, and there's a really big moment for that. But this, it's more about the general feeling of development and the general evolution of the track, and then letting everything go at the end. Sometimes you have to just let things go, and I wanted the end of this track to sound a bit like that, In the mix project for that, I made the strings quite dark. At that point, I took a load of the high-end information out with an EQ, kind of automated, as well as fading up the reverb. And with the swells at the beginning as well, I did a lot of automation on things like reverb and delay in the mix project. But yeah, so this is just a production file really. But yeah, that's pretty much it really. A whole load of percussion, a whole load of field recordings. I'm really enjoying the process of doing that. Pretty much everything that I'm writing at the moment, all these upcoming tracks have got elements of that in them. See what else we've got that I can talk about here. So at the climax, actually, I added this synth in addition to the strings playing that melody, but I wanted something else to cut through as well. It's just this Juno synth. It's bloody wonderful, that thing. Various synth elements that go on, but they are automated. So with this one, see, this is again the cutoff of the synth that I was using because I wanted it to grow up to the point of the climax of the track. So when it starts, it just sounds like this. And then towards the end it goes. And there's this synth as well, which is doing a very similar pattern to at the beginning when the piano first comes in, and there's that accompanying synth arpeggio, so it's... There's another book flutter at the end there, just here. So there we go, that's how I produced my latest instrumental single, In Flight. Like I said, I really do hope that you enjoy it and that you like listening to it. I certainly enjoyed producing it. One thing that I do feel I want to say is that I find it really odd revisiting these projects because I'm quite far ahead of my schedule of music releases now. I am so excited about some of them. Not in like a weird or arrogant way, but I'm very proud of some of the music that I'm writing at the moment, and I'm excited about it when I listen to it myself. And then I realize, oh wait, that one's not coming out for like 2 months. But I'm excited. I hope that you're enjoying the releases and that you like the plan for releasing more music as well. Be sure to follow me on Spotify if you're interested in the music, because then you'll be the first people to hear it as soon as it all comes out. And in just under 3 weeks time, the next instrumental single, Here's My Heart, will be released. So if you wanted to grab that, there's a pre-save link down in the description there. It's more of a kind of ambient post-rock track. Here's a quick sample. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been interesting for you in one way or another. As always, links to my EP and all of my music and all my socials are in the description down there. Hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you very soon.